long as we have faith in our cause
I'm Mike.
and unconquerable willpower,
I'm Dave.
salvation will not be denied us.
And this is Between the Lines.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
And we're back.
Hey, we're back.
Hey, we are here. We are here in the Between the Lines studio. Kind of taking in everything that's happened over this last week. It's we haven't really done a podcast in 2 weeks. We did some YouTube videos last week.
Yeah.
So go to our YouTube channel, check those out. We got a couple of reactions to some oversimplified history videos. They were pretty funny. We have a video out there of us watching the history of the entire world.
It was pretty good.
Clip that was entertaining.
Yeah.
The last episode we did, was Fifth Amendment. Was that the last one we did, or did we do something? I think that was the last one we did was Fifth Amendment.
Yeah. There's so many of them.
Oh man.
Can't we just combine it into one and call it the all-inclusive amendment?
Man, that would be like the director's cut of Lord of the Rings trilogy,
or
but less entertaining.
Or Zack Snyder's.
Oh my God.
The never-ending
never-ending
movie.
DC movie.
Good grief! What was that? 4.5, 5 hours long.
And it was so dry.
It was bad.
It was so dry. I was so excited for it too because it's like, oh man, we finally get to see the version Zack Snyder wanted everybody to see.
And then it's like,
man, they were right to edit that shit down.
That
was bad.
It's like a little kid that has too much to say and trying to say it all in one breath.
Yeah. Oh man.
It was. I just want to say a shout out to the Little League World Series.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's in our neck of the woods.
Williamsport, PA.
That's what everybody knows Williamsport for.
That's what I do. Anytime it's like, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Muncie. Where's Muncie? Outside of Williamsport. Where's Williamsport?
Little League.
Did you ever hear of the Little League World Series? Yeah. That's Williamsport.
Yeah, pretty much. It's not like it hasn't been around since 1947.
Yeah,
which it has been.
This is the 75th anniversary.
75th anniversary. I got my hat on.
Yeah.
So
we invented Little League, bitches.
Yeah.
We started that shit right here.
You know what's pretty impressive about the Little League is that of all the sports that are out there as far as like kid sports, it is the most organized and most well publicized, I guess, or well received.
Well, Little League's been around, obviously, 75 years, but Little League's been around for a long time, for one.
Yeah.
Way longer than, let's say, like Pop Warner football or anything like that. And baseball was, at one point, was the game in America.
Yeah.
And the NFL's kind of taken over because I really think the strike, the MLB strike in the 90s, had a lot to do with the downfall of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, 93.
It just made them look... I mean, the NFL had its own strike, but it wasn't as well publicized because the NFL wasn't as popular.
Yeah.
And I think the strike kind of made people realize that, the players were in it for the money and not for the love of the game.
I mean, if you think about it, it's like, if you were to take some of the original Hall of Famers,
Babe Ruth,
Ty Cobb, Cy Young, Lou Gehrig, all these guys, the guys that got in on the ground floor of some of these
Willie
things.
Mays.
And you sat them in a line
Jackie
up against some of the new guys that are playing nowadays.
Yeah.
And if let's say it's the 90s and they're sitting there talking to them, I would imagine like half of them would just be like, you're pathetic.
Yeah.
It's like you're making about 1,000 times more than what I could have ever made in my lifetime. Like you're living like kings.
Yep.
And you're complaining about what you're making.
Just like in the NFL, a lot of those players would get off work after working at a factory for 6 or 8 hours or 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah.
And then they would go and play baseball.
Yeah.
For however
it was like a
4
side
hours.
job, but it was something they enjoyed doing.
But and they got paid a little bit to do it, so they did it because they loved it.
And they roughnecked it. They didn't have like specially designed baseballs by Nike and specially designed shoes that make you run and jump and and, fly faster.
Yeah. I mean, all the sports are guilty of that.
Yeah.
All of them. The NFL is the same way too. Like when the NFL started, they were wearing leather helmets.
Yeah.
And they were just, steel workers.
Yep.
And they got off work and went and played football for $50,000 a year, which was good money back then. But what people don't realize, and I'm going to go on a soapbox here for just a second about the NFL. The whole reason why these prissy football players get paid so damn much money is because they negotiated for higher pay because of the risk of injury. There's a high risk of injury in the NFL, and there's a chance that you could get really hurt and stuff like that. So you put your body on the line when you play in the NFL.
It's not like police officers do that or anything.
Yeah. So they asked for more money, and the owners are like, yeah, okay, that's fair. We'll give you more money. So then they turn around and say, then the owners turn around and say, hey, we're paying these players a whole lot of money. When they get hurt, we're still paying them even though they're hurt.
Yeah.
We got to make sure that we're not letting these players get hurt. So now they get the money and they get the protection.
Yeah.
The players are winning out here.
They're coddled.
Which is fine. I don't want to see anybody like suffering from CRT or whatever the hell they call it, CTR, or I can't remember what they call it, but I don't want to see anybody suffer from that kind of stuff. But at the same time, the whole reason why we're paying you millions and millions of dollars was because of your risk of injury. Now it's mostly because they're getting a share of the advertisement dollars is what it boils down to now.
Well, it's really ridiculous, though. I mean, if you think about it, it's like what the common and I know it's people's fault that the players continue on the route that they are, because people will pay for it. People will continue to pay for it. Like, I was absolutely offended when the Eagles back in early 2000s, I guess it was, they started renting out seats.
Huh.
Like, it started becoming like your property or whatever the case be, and you could lease it or whatever the case be. And then the sheer expense, like just the seats alone are going to cost you anywhere between $5 to $10 to $15,000, depending on what you're going for.
Unless you're in the nosebleeds where you can't see anything anyway.
Even then, it's expensive. Like, football games are not cheap to get into. I mean, it's one thing. That's why if anything, I appreciate like the minor league sports more than I do the major league sports. So, but yeah, what's up?
Got a fly on your head.
Oh.
we got a fly
like,
in the
who are you
room.
waving at? It's like, hi.
We got a fly in the room. You had a Mike Pence moment there for a second.
Gotcha. But it's just, I mean, I don't want to take up the time with this.
I
but
get you. It's a good segue because the bitchy millionaires have a ton of money, and we just spent a ton of money as a country.
Yeah.
So I don't remember what day it was. Doesn't matter. The Biden administration canceled $10,000 worth of student debt for anyone making under $125,000 a year. And if you got a Pell Grant on top of your student loans, then you are eligible for $20,000 worth of student debt.
Can I just start this conversation by saying that's a load of bullshit?
I mean, I get it. I'm gonna start off with a little bit of compassion. I come from a school that defrauded a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I went to a shitty little school called McCann, the McCann School of Business and Technology, and they had predatory loan practices. However, what I will say about that is we have a legal system for a reason.
Yeah.
And I was duped into some taking out some loans that I probably shouldn't have taken out of. I'm responsible for that. I signed the papers, so that's my debt, and I've been paying on that debt.
Yeah.
I've paid it off down below $10,000, so this is probably going to cancel out the rest of my debt. However, I will say that McCann was sued for what they did, and they lost their class action lawsuit, And there's a mechanism in the United States federal loan system called borrower's defense, where if you truly believe that you were defrauded, you can apply for a borrower's defense. Before I apply for the cancellation of my debt, I'm going to apply for the borrower's defense. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm holding McCann liable for their fraud and not passing the expense of their fraud onto the taxpayers.
Yeah.
That being said, I understand that there's a lot of people out there that can't afford their debt. What I'll say about that is there's a lot of people out there that can't afford a Porsche.
Yeah.
They don't go out and sign the papers for a $60,000 Porsche the way that they go out and sign the papers for an $80,000 college education or $120,000 college education. Just because it's a college education, a piece of paper, doesn't make it any different.
Well, there's so many aspects to this argument, and I'm going to start it from this end of the angle. Is that one of the earliest jobs that I held out of during college, actually, out of high school, is I worked for a nonprofit agency that did loans for the nonprofit sector specifically. So that's one thing you don't think about. It's like nonprofits need loans sometimes to build facilities, to start projects, whatever the case be. So this agency specifically focused on low interest, non-predatory lending to these agencies that could be controlled and maintained very easily, for these agencies and were reasonable. So our big thing was always, just highlighting just how banks were predatory. There's no illusion to that.
Yeah.
Me going through college, I think I may have had one or two FAFSAs. I paid those off, but I had a major bank loan from a bank, education loan. So I understand as well as anybody is that, usually the educational loans are geared to be, appealing to that age group that's going into college because they try to promote like lower interest rates and grace periods and all that kind of stuff. But after time, after you hit those grace periods, it becomes a burden after that point, unless you're able to secure like that dream job that everybody expects to hit when they get out of college.
Yep.
So that being said, is that, there's no illusion on my part with regards to the burden that creates. But at the same time, you have a lot of students who, let's take for instance, students who have family members, specifically maybe parents, that work in an educational system. And those kids have the option to go to schools where those parents work at, and they basically get free rides to those schools, if not like steeply discounted rates. But then over top of that, they decide to go to schools that fall outside of that scope.
Yep.
So now they're subject to the same price points that every other person would be subject to that doesn't have that perk, I guess you would say.
Yep.
So again, it's on their onus. It's their onus. It's their decision to have stepped out of the realm of what could be affordable into the realm of what's not affordable at this point. So I have compassion. I have empathy because I understand it. Everybody understands it because anybody that's working and, has had at least 1 or 2 or a couple years worth of college, maybe some have gone, 8, 10, 12 years worth of college and understand it. I mean, doctors and lawyers. I mean, it's required for some of these professions to do 8 plus 10, all these years, of learning. I get it. I understand it. But at the same time, it's just like, you still knew what you were getting into. I think my thing is how they're approaching this. It's not that I don't think we should help people that are in this situation. It's how we're helping them.
Yeah.
It's the idea behind, what's the old thing where, if you were I grew up in a city, so you were if you were walking around town, you were pretty well aware of people that were looking for handouts and that kind of thing. So, and after a while, you learned that the best way to help that person is to never give them cash.
Yes.
If they were truly in need of something like food or clothing or shelter, you found those things.
Yep.
You gave them food. You found them the clothing they need. You got them in touch with people that could get them shelter and get them into places or get them on their feet somehow. You didn't give them things directly because that always ended up being more of a negative than a positive. I mean, even the University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League school, all the incoming class, the new classes for that year, they would do an orientation, and when a specific part of that orientation for a number of years, I don't know if they do it anymore, is that they would instruct the new incoming students to never give money to anybody in the that are asking for handouts, because they're like, those people are making more than we are in a lot of cases every day.
Yeah, they did a study. I can't remember what city it was in, but they did a study, and most of those panhandlers, like the people that play the guitar on the, I mean, that's a little different, but the professional panhandlers can make up to $40,000 to $50,000 a year,
and it's all under the table.
It's 100% untaxable, under the table. That's a personal rule of mine. Is if I'm out and somebody needs help, I have no problem helping somebody, but I'll take you to go get lunch.
Yeah,
I'm not going to give you cash. I'll take you to go get lunch and I'll buy you a meal. I have no problem doing that. But I'm not gonna give you cash so that you can support your alcohol habit or your drug habit if you have one. Not saying that all homeless people have those things, but a good portion of the homeless population, unfortunately, do have addiction problems.
Yeah,
and that's why
it's like homeless. The old, I just drove up here from somewhere and I ran out of gas.
Yeah. Oh, my family is. Yeah. We're on our way to Disneyland and I ran out of gas, and you realize you're in Pennsylvania, right? And you're going north. If you're heading to Disneyland, you're not even close to going in the right direction.
You bought a bad map.
You see this the N on the map goes to the top. That's how the map works. But anyway, there's what I guess my point is there's mechanisms though.
Yeah.
For those that are defrauded.
Yeah.
And this handout, I mean, I'm all for. I mean, believe me, I'm going to be happy that my debt's gone, but I'm not going to be happy when we're paying $12 a gallon for milk.
Well, it's just like with the stipends or whatever you want to call them they gave us during the COVID.
Yep. All it did was...
nobody here, myself included, is going to be like, no, I'm not going to take it.
I'm not going to take it.
Because it wouldn't have mattered anyway.
No, yeah.
They're giving it away to somebody.
Exactly. The only silver lining, so to speak, for this program is you have to apply to get it. So it doesn't happen automatically.
Yeah.
There's going to be people out there that just pay off their loans because it's the right thing to do. I'm not going to be one of them because, hey, look, if the government's going to give me a handout, I'm going to take it. Maybe that makes me part of the problem. I don't know. But it's odd to me though. Like, here's another question. Why aren't we talking about why college is so expensive to begin with?
And that's one of the directions I wanted to go when you brought up that you wanted to talk about this. Let me back up a little bit. I saw a post recently about a woman who just had a child and was in the hospital, and she got her bills sent to her from the insurance company. Thankfully, the insurance company took care of about 99% of what she owed.
Nice.
But she showed a copy of the bill for just having a child. It was like $50,000-$60,000. I know the medical field is a whole separate argument, but what I'm getting at is this idea is that everything is astronomically and insanely ill proportioned to what it actually should cost.
Yeah.
There's no reason on God's green earth why a school should feel it's necessary to charge $60, $70, $80, $90, $100,000 for a semester.
Yeah.
And you're talking like you're charging them for dorm rooms that are bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, you see some of these dorm rooms.
Oh, yeah.
God, if you got taken in by a realtor or a landlord to show you around to some of these dorms and told you you're going to pay $30,000 a year for this piece of shit, it's like, I'd be like, go fuck yourself.
Yeah,
I'm going to go find some other place for half the cost.
That's why off-campus housing is so popular right now, because if you go off campus, you can find an apartment for if it's the same rate as what you would get in the dorm, it's going to be a huge apartment, and you can usually split it with other people. And
yeah. And plus it's nicer, it's maintained, it doesn't look like it's, Auschwitz.
Yeah, my Lord. I mean, for real though, like some of those college dorm rooms look like prison.
Yeah. I mean literally.
Like, literally.
And they get away with charging what they do for them. And it just, the thing of it is, and then they're talking about with the tenure of the professors and the teachers and all that kind of stuff. It's
bullshit.
Like, it is.
I'm sorry, Harvard alone, I feel like I'm going to just throw out a low number, not the number that I think it is. But from what I understand, they have like $20 billion in the bank.
In a hedge fund.
Yeah. From
not
past students and whatnot.
To their credit. Now, here's the only caveat in Harvard, and I know some others do it, but I just don't know what the numbers are. But Harvard utilizes that hedge fund to actually pay full rides for students coming in.
Good.
I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. If the alumni of Harvard want to dump all this money into a hedge fund and to use it to scout out, the best and the brightest and all that kind of stuff and give them the opportunities, I don't have a problem with that at all. I guess my problem is when it becomes an entitlement. When it shifts from an endeavor by a group to facilitate to an entitlement, because that's what it turns into. It turns into an entitlement.
Well, unfortunately, you get into that analogy of like the bears at Yellowstone Park, where they always have that sign for the bears at Yellowstone that say, don't feed the animals, or they won't be able to fend for themselves.
Yeah,
it just goes the same thing, and it also, in my opinion, it also applies to like the welfare state.
Yeah.
Because essentially, and these scholarships, I'm telling you, brain fog today, Dave. These scholarships that they give out, and whatnot, they eventually, people expect them.
Yeah.
It's just like food stamps.
Yeah.
When you get the food stamps, I've gotten them before, but when you get them, it then becomes part of your income.
Yeah.
And then you start planning around the food stamps and whatnot, and it just works its way into the system, and it becomes expected. It becomes part of your routine, so to speak. So then you can't break free.
Exactly. Of it. You don't treat it as a temporary, like a temporary help. You treat it as a new.
This is a new source of income.
But keep going. No.
And that I'm getting close to the end of my point. So you then adapt to that being the new normal, and then what happens is you eventually graduate out of needing that stuff because you've had that assistance. Eventually you get to a point where either through raises at your company or whatever it may be, through your own means, you work your way up to a certain point. Then those food stamps get cut off, and it's devastating because now all of a sudden that income that you counted on is gone, and you're left being like, well, wait a second. I'm making less than I was with the food stamps, and so on and so forth. And my point, I guess, is you become accustomed and you adapt to these things, and then you expect them.
Yeah.
Because they've become, and that's the problem, in my opinion, with any of these handouts, whether it be food stamps or this cancellation of debt. Like other people have said, there was a couple. A middle income couple that paid off $190,000 worth of student loan debt just through perseverance and saving and whatnot, and now they cancel everyone else's debt.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. And that's one of the things. And in thinking about this, I realized that they didn't think about this, and that's my problem with this whole cancellation piece. Is that, again, going back to what I started to say, is that there's no illusions as to the obstacles and the hurdles and the trouble that loans can provide for a person going well into their adulthood, into the end of their life, even sometimes. We understand that. That's not the point. The point is that there are options that are out there that could alleviate the burden, but at the same time could also still instill into at least the younger generation that's paying off these loans. The idea is that there's still a sense of responsibility to be had with what you sign up for. And what I mean by that is, and my point is that I think they should have looked at it from the perspective of tax credits.
Yeah.
Like, why?
That's not a bad idea.
Why couldn't they have structured a tax credit that looks at their loans? Now, here's the other piece of this, just to kind of fill in the blanks here of what I'm trying to get at, is that they're only taking into account federal and government loans. They are not, and let me repeat, they are not taking into account people that have taken out educational loans with private banks, private lenders.
This only counts towards...
This completely bypasses all those people that are still spending enormous amounts monthly on bills with loans because they didn't apply for the FAFSA loans. Here's the other piece that I'm getting to. Is that the government, Biden and all these morons that don't understand how finances work, yes, they are a moron, and they should not be in control of finances. I'm not saying that there's nobody in the administration that doesn't know how finances work. I'm just saying that the immediate head operators of these decisions are morons, morons, morons. But the point is that they could have structured a tax credit that looks at the income of the individual currently, just like your tax code does with everything else. Absolutely. And they could have looked at what burden monthly the loans place on a person, and they could have structured a tax credit that allows them to write off as, whatever amount that they're having to pay into that monthly, and then maybe even structure it to where they're paying it above, not just on principal, but paying above, like getting it down, not just paying the minimum requirement. Yeah. Because that's what happens with a lot of these loans is that they start accruing interest. And that's where it becomes almost predatory. It's like you took out $14,000 to go to school, but at the end of your life, you're paying $40,000, And that's the point, is that structure a tax credit that takes into account the principal, also takes into account the interest that this idiot agency that is trying to filch.
I honestly feel like if you're getting a federal loan for school or something like that, then that loan should be interest free. In my opinion. Yeah. That would have been a fine compromise to me, is that okay, we're not going to completely forgive these loans, but you can take, I don't want to say you can take as long as you need to pay them off, but you can structure these loans based upon your income, and pay them off at your leisure interest free.
Well, they're so poorly conceived because if I'm not mistaken, unless things have changed, is that the grace periods on these loans start or end about 6 months after you stop going to school.
Yeah, yeah. And
like who in what world does anybody except for the very small percentage of people coming out of college end up into a job equal, if not better, than what they were paying in loans, or what they would owe in loans?
That was my whole gripe about the college that I went to, because I had just gotten, just a little backstory because context matters. I had just gotten laid off. I had a factory job. I worked in a steel factory for many, many years. I got laid off because of the depression, the mini depression in 2008, 2009. And due to that, I had an opportunity to have some of my tuition covered to go back to school. So I was deciding whether or not I wanted to go back to school. Chances were I wanted to go someplace, but the college that I went to was pretty far away from my house. The reason I went to the college I did is because when I sat down in the enrollment office, they basically promised me that the reason that their school was different is that they make you... they have a whole team of people that get you a job after you graduate. They have alumni that provide occupations to graduates out of school to make sure that if you graduate from this school, you're gonna get gainful employment afterwards. I'm like, boy, that sounds like a great idea. And then I graduate, magna cum laude, mind you. I didn't just skate through. I had great grades. I graduated magna cum laude and no employment to be had.
Yeah.
Nothing. They didn't even call me. I had to, they wouldn't even return my calls or emails. I ended up having to go physically drive to campus and wait to talk to somebody from the employment department and whatever they call that, postgraduate department, whatever they call it. I had to physically go there, and they would tell me, "Oh, we got nothing. We got nothing in your field. We got nothing in your field available." And this, that, and the other. I was literally going to take a job at McDonald's. I had an interview at McDonald's because a friend of mine was a manager at McDonald's. I had an interview there before I ended up getting my job at Best Buy. And because I got the job at Best Buy, I didn't have to work at McDonald's with my degree in computer sciences. That was my biggest gripe, is I would not have gone to that school had they not promised me to get employment. So that's where I feel like I was defrauded. So I applied for the...
Well, not for anything, but I don't think very many schools do that very well, period.
No.
I don't. And here's the thing is that I would say probably within the last 10 to 15 years, that's been a selling point. Mm-hmm. If you look at all these billboards and whatnot that they put up about schools that are in that local area, one of the big things is they post how many of their students have gotten jobs out of graduation.
Exactly.
Now, I'm not saying that there's no schools that do this. I'm just saying that the majority of schools do this very poorly. Now, and then let's take this into consideration. I used to work as a paralegal, and I had to make transitions between a couple different firms in the course of the couple of years I worked in that field. And one of the things that you would reach out, or one of the agencies you would reach out to, are temp agencies. Headhunters, if you will, but headhunter agencies that were specifically focused on your profession, so to speak, because they just had, connections to that world, so to speak. You know, you wouldn't go, if you're a welder, you wouldn't go to a temp agency that focuses on attorneys. Yeah. You know what I mean?
No, I get you.
You would find a
your
headhunter.
niche.
Yeah. So anyways, you would find these groups, and I would get calls constantly from them. Like I would get emails and calls about job updates and wanting to sit down to rebuild your profile so that we can better search for you and all that kind of things. Schools don't do that. Schools are not even a fraction of, in most cases, are not even a fraction of that efficient when it comes to doing that kind of stuff.
It's unfortunate too, because like you said, your grace period ends very shortly after you leave school.
Yeah.
So if they don't find you that
within 6 months,
if they don't find you that amazing job that they promised you, like they even gave me numbers. They're like, "Oh, your starting salary will be like $40,000 to $60,000 a year right out the gate." Yeah, I'm like, "Wow, this is going to change my life." You know what I mean? And I'm thinking, this is exactly what I want to do. So I did it. I did everything I was supposed to do. I got my grades. I took my classes. I fulfilled my end of the bargain.
Yeah.
They did not.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like I was defrauded. It's like I can't even find a good analogy. It's like you go to buy a car and they tell you, "Oh, yeah, you're going to get exactly the car you want." And yeah, it's green. You ordered a car that's hunter green. Yeah, it's green, but it's like lime green, and it's patchy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you were promised one thing, and what you were promised a Porsche 911, and what you get is a Prius.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, then, I mean, not to take this, I mean, we could go down a rabbit hole with this stuff,
sure.
But not for anything. But that's why, like, a lot of the online schools started to develop such a reputation, too, because they were education at a lower price point, a much lower price point. In some cases, like a tenth of the cost of what you would pay at any normal school.
Well, all of those schools have been sued for predatory practices. All of them.
Yeah.
If you remember, like back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was always those commercials on TV for University of Phoenix and ITT Technic, DeVry and McCann and all these other, all of them. ITT and DeVry were just had a class action lawsuit against them. McCann had a class action lawsuit. There's a whole list of schools that have defrauded people. It's a giant list. You can go on the Department of Ed's website and look it up. Some of these places are still in business. McCann is still in business. They're still doing their thing. They only have like one campus, but they're still in business. How is this possible?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They should lose their license immediately.
Well, it's the thing of it is that some of these schools were like overnight startup schools. They had no structure. They had no plan. Well, at least it seemed like they had no plan. It was sort of like, getting called about a pyramid scheme almost. But, but then on top of that, the colleges that were established started to see them as a threat to their own roles. So then they started delving into the online schooling more heavily. Because when I was in college, which was 99, 2000, up until a couple years later, the thing with that is that you didn't hear the online schooling.
Yeah.
It wasn't a thing. It really wasn't a thing, I would say, up until about maybe, 2005, 2010, somewhere in that range. You really didn't start to hear about that stuff being offered. And now it's like every single school has
high school.
Yeah.
High school, elementary school is online now.
So literally,
COVID had something to do with that, but I'm talking even before COVID, because I have family members that went to cyber school, and this was years ago, like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That they were going to cyber school online rather than actually in on-premise school. So this wasn't a COVID thing.
No.
This has been going around for a while.
But it hasn't been a long time in the period.
No, not in the
like
scope
maybe
of
10 or 15 years it's shifted.
Absolutely.
But, but anyways, back to the point that we were trying to get at is that there have been, through the course, nobody has been under the illusion that education is cheap. But it doesn't get any better.
No.
It hasn't gotten any better. Nothing cost-wise has gotten any better. Inflation has been a rule of thumb since I don't know when.
The invention of the economy?
Yeah, basically. So if inflation typically doesn't... I'll put it in this perspective. If you have somebody that manages investments for you, like a financial advisor or whatever the case be, one of the things that they like to do, especially when they're trying to give you a sense of how your investments are going to do, is they give you a sense of the broad versus the short, or the long versus the short. In other words, they'll show you like a major fund that, maybe some of your money's going to go into for, IRA or 401k or whatever the case be. And they'll give you the sense is that, listen, there were periods of 5 to 10 years where this fund dropped just consistently. But if you look at it over the period of 50, 60, 70 years, this fund has consistently gone up.
Yeah.
So if you look at it from the long, this has always been a profitable investment in the long run.
Yeah.
Inflation, not a profitable investment, but has always gone up.
Yeah.
It may have dropped a few years, but it always goes up.
Yep.
And we're especially seeing it in education, which is what we're talking about. And the thing of it is that they are not accounting for that. They're not accounting for that in light of what students, the burden that they're coming under. I mean, the whole process, it's almost like Sky Mall. I remember this episode of, do you remember Sliders?
Yeah, the show, yeah.
Yeah, where they would go to different dimensions and whatnot. So anyways, they end up in this universe where everybody works for Sky Mall. So everybody's an employee of Sky Mall. And so basically, you make enough to buy things from the Sky Mall company store, buy your, rent your house or your apartment from the Sky Mall real estate. You don't leave. Like, you don't ever leave that system. You're always in that system. And that's the whole point, is that the way that loans are structured is that you're always in that system.
I hate to throw this out there, but it's financial slavery.
It is. It quite literally is financial slavery.
They're setting you up to fail, and they're setting you up to be dependent upon a system that doesn't have any interest in your well-being at all.
Well, that's why people like Mike Rowe are so popular. I love Mike Rowe to death. Mike Rowe is a gem.
Yeah.
I mean, when in the world of educational platitudes, Mike Rowe is like the realism that people need to hear, because he comes out with these things. It's like, listen, most of the, dirty jobs and what most people know him for, he's shown and shed the light on just a world of missed opportunity that we've kind of overlooked, because in some part of our brains we got to thinking that college is an absolute necessity.
Yeah.
Most of your self-made millionaires today are coming out and being like, listen, this is a waste of money unless you're going to college for something very specific. Like you're going for medical, or you're going for, an attorney, something that absolutely requires certain levels of, certifications and write-offs and sign-offs, to certify that you're able to do this or whatever the case be. Now, granted, it's not to say that college isn't worth the time spent, but I think about it, it's like how many people go to school for a very specific thing, and it's jammed down their throat that they have to take all this other stuff all over again. No, you can't go for what you want to do. You have to spend at least 2 years, doing things that we want you to do, basically.
Have you ever seen, I'm sure you have. Have you, I don't mean to step on your point. So
you're fine. No.
Okay. Have you ever seen, and I want to make this the last point because we have some other things we want to talk about. But have you ever seen the movie Accepted with Justin Long, where he gets rejected from every college that he applies to? I
don't think so.
So he and his friends. Okay, here's the plot of the movie. Justin Long plays a kid that just graduated high school, and he applies to all these colleges and gets rejected from everyone because he was just kind of a goof off in high school. So what he does is he and his friends rent an abandoned mental institution, and they defraud their parents into paying tuition to a college that doesn't exist. They invent a school called the South Harmon Institute of Technology.
Okay.
SHIT.
That's perfect.
You need to see this because what it does is it shines a light. It's a comedy and it's very funny, but it's also on its face. It's like a trial of the American academic system.
Yeah.
So essentially, what they do is they start this college. And at first, they're just goofing off. But pretty soon, they decide, okay, well, what do you want to learn? And he's like, well, when I was, the one kid's like, okay, when I was in high school, I went to summer camp the one year, and we made wood carvings. And I really enjoyed it. So he's like, okay, well, why don't you learn how to make wood carvings? So they take his tuition money, and he spends his own tuition money on the materials to learn how to do wood carving, and he's amazing at it. And this other kid wanted to learn how to cook, and he liked experimenting with different foods. So he started putting all these herbs together and things like that, and started spending all of his money learning how to cook strange foods and things like that. And it turned out that they were using their own money to learn what they wanted to learn in their own way. So this college, they get sued by Harmon College because they stole the Harmon College name. It's supposed to be Harvard, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, long story short is they end up getting a temporary, spoiler alert, they end up getting a temporary accreditation to continue as a college because they were actually improving their lives. But what started as this goofball scheme actually turned out to be a way to educate themselves. And the point is you don't need to go to an institution to learn these things. If you want to learn how to do wood carving, take that money that you would have invested in college and teach yourself this and teach yourself that. You don't have to go. And my broader point is, in the middle of this movie, there's the girl, the love interest of Justin Long, is going to Harmon College, and she's going for photography. And she's like, well, I was going to take this art photography course, but my instructor said that it doesn't apply to a degree in photography, and I wanted to take a photojournalism course, but that applied to a degree in journalism, but not a degree in photography. And it's like, well, it's photography. You're learning. So it pointed out the absurdity of what you're paying for in college, and everybody at these colleges were stressed out. Watch the movie. It's a great, like trial of the modern college experience.
So I think the last thing I want to just say about this, and then we can go on to the other big thing, is they need to figure out a way to alleviate some of this cost without paying it off for them. They need to figure that out. And the argument has always been, well, things are just too expensive. Then put your heads together and put some time into it, and let's figure out what makes it so expensive. Why is it so expensive? Why is it unnecessarily expensive? I mean, they do audits of, agencies every year. Companies do audits of where their money is going. They have to. It's like, I remember Enron from back in the, 90s and 2000s. They had to look at their accounting and what they were spending money on, and turned out they were cooking the books, and they all got indicted for it. So it's like, at what point do we start auditing, why schools are so expensive? At what point do we start auditing why the government feels it's necessary to pay off stuff with money that doesn't exist, instead of just making routes through the whole mess for students to be able to pay off their mess, And that's the thing. It still should be their mess.
Absolutely.
I don't think your mess should be my mess. I don't think my mess should be your mess.
Yep.
I think our mess should be our mess. I think it should be, sole responsibility. 1, because it teaches you things. 2, because I don't want your mess.
Yeah. Well, it is a good life lesson to learn, where if you sign on the dotted line, I've had a couple of arguments with people on social media, and it's like, look, I'm not trying to be, uncompassionate.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to not have empathy for people. I do. But at the same time, you signed a contract.
Yeah.
And well, and the one person argued, well, I didn't understand what I was signing. Then don't sign it.
Yeah, exactly.
You never sign anything you don't understand.
Well,
That's
here's the
just
thing.
Rule number 1 of life.
Isn't there a I had to have a co-signer when I signed for mine.
Sometimes you do. I didn't, because when I went to college the second time, I didn't need a co-signer because I was a full grown adult now.
Gotcha.
Once you turn 18, you don't really need a co-signer.
Yeah.
Sometimes though, for credit reasons, you need a co-signer.
Yeah.
But I didn't need one my second time around. I signed everything myself. So I guess the thing about it is A, don't sign something that you don't understand. If you don't understand it, have somebody explain it to you that's not the school that you're trying to apply to. They're going to make everything look like, perfume and roses when it's really shit and vinegar.
Yeah.
So I guess that's enough of that. I don't even know what more to say about that.
Outside of the fact that it's going to cost more money than they anticipated.
Yeah, they originally earmarked it at $300 billion, and now these numbers, it's like $300 billion doesn't even seem, it's not even a real thing to me. I can't even comprehend $300 billion. And that amount has jumped to $500 billion, just an estimate. So,
and it's going to keep going up.
It's going to keep going up. So the other thing, I just want to mark this down. The other thing that happened over the week is they released the affidavit for the raid on Mar-a-Lago. That's what we talked about in the last episode, is the raid on Mar-a-Lago. So they, for those of you that haven't been on Earth this past couple weeks, is the FBI performed a warranted search on Mar-a-Lago. As it turns out, the warrant was a pretty general warrant. There wasn't really anything specific listed. They were allowed to search whatever they wanted for whatever properties they wanted. And the judge was fighting with the Department of Justice because the Department of Justice didn't want to release the application for the warrant, because as we discussed under the Fourth Amendment, you end up you have to have, under threat of perjury, you have to have somebody swear under oath to the probable cause that would grant said warrant. So when they go before a judge, somebody has to draw up paperwork to apply for the warrant that shows probable cause as to why everything was searched. So in that process, the DOJ didn't want it released what they were applying for. So it was fought back and forth, but the judge basically said, this is too important for you to not release it. This is the first time in history that an American president has ever been raided, so on and so forth. So we need to have transparency.
Yeah.
So the DOJ proposed a redacted version of the application, and that's what we got, is a redacted version. So what we have today on Between the Lines is a copy of said warrant. So up on the screen, what you can see now is a PDF copy of the actual affidavit. So what you're going through here at the beginning is basically just a bunch of mumbo jumbo describing that this is the application for search warrant affidavit, redacted ex parte memorandum of law enforcement concerning proposed redactions. So essentially, this was the version of the affidavit right here. So you have, at the beginning, you have some small redactions of names, which I get. Essentially, what this affidavit is, unfortunately, is everything that we already know.
Yeah.
There's nothing new in this.
So the first portions of it are just general stuff that you would see in any affidavit.
Yeah.
And the stuff that we actually want to know, the stuff that we want to see, as you scroll through this document, you'll soon find that this is a big piece of shit.
Yeah, I mean,
it's worthless.
The FBI's investigation has established that documents bearing classification markings which appear to contain national defense information were among materials contained in the 15 boxes and were stored at the premises in an unauthorized location. So if you go up here, you'll see it describes the government is conducting a criminal investigation concerning the improper removal and storage of classified information in unauthorized spaces, as well as the unlawful concealment or removal of government records. So herein, the former president, Donald J. Trump, hereinafter, he'll be F. POTUS. And the 15 boxes of records is what, when they reference 15 boxes, they're referencing the initial 15 boxes of documents that were given back in February to the Department of Justice and NARA. So anywhere in this document where they reference 15 boxes, that's what they're talking about. And the premises is 1100 South Ocean Boulevard, Palm Beach, Florida. Don't care about the zip code. Hereinafter known as the premises. That's Mar-a-Lago. So anytime in this document that they reference 15 boxes, they're talking about the original 15 boxes. When they reference F. POTUS, they're talking about Trump. And when they reference premises, they're referencing Mar-a-Lago. I just wanted to preface the rest of this document so that you understand that's how legal documents work. Is that first it starts off kind of describing what terms are going to mean in the rest of the document. So once we actually get to the meat and potatoes as to why, what was in this location, that's redacted. Further, there is probable cause to believe. Well, further from what? I don't know. Like, this is redacted. How am I going to know what the further is for? Right here it says further there is probable cause. You can't see the cursor online, but under the redaction, that's what it says. And then it goes on. Down here, we see names are redacted. To me, that's fine. I understand why they're redacting the special agents' names. Now we get, based on my experience and training, I'm familiar with efforts used to unlawfully collect, retain. So this guy is making, I'm familiar with what happens when people take records and stuff like that. So now it's just basically this line is saying that he makes this affidavit in support of attachment B. Based upon the following facts, there is probable cause to believe that the locations to be searched at the premises contain evidence. So really nothing there. Source of evidence, the facts set forth in the affidavit are based on my personal knowledge obtained during my participation in this investigation. So it's basically just laying out. It doesn't say what the evidence is. It just says that he has it. Then it starts going into the statutory authority and the definition. So all it's doing here is describing the U.S. statutes to which the evidence falls under. still doesn't describe the evidence. This goes on for some time. All the way down to here, human control systems, SI control systems designed to protect intelligence information derived from the clandestine human resource, blah, 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 commonly referred to as human intelligence, protects human intelligence. It's just describing different, there's the FISA Act as a dissemination control. All it's doing is just describing the statutes and things that it used to fill out this warrant. And here again, here's 18 USC, 18 USC 2771. These are all things that were in the papers, nothing new here. Now we get to the probable cause. On February 9th, special agent in charge of the NARA's Office of the Inspector General sent NARA referral to the DOJ. So on February 9th, the DOJ got a reference from NARA, the Records Association, that they got 15 boxes that contained newspapers, magazines, printed news articles, photos, miscellaneous printouts, notes, presidential correspondence, personal and post-presidential records, and quote-unquote a lot of classified records. So then on February 18th, the Archivist of the United States Chief Administrator for NARA stated in a letter to Congress's Committee of Oversight that NARA had an ongoing communications with the representatives of President Trump throughout 2021, which resulted in the transfer of 15 boxes. So they contacted Trump. They asked for documents. Trump gave them the documents they asked for. NARA has identified items marked as classified in those boxes. So because those boxes had classified documents in them, they assumed that there was other boxes of classified documents. NRA staff has been in communication with the Department of Justice. The letter was made public after the law, and there's a link to the letter. And then we go to, on February 18th, the same day, the Save America Political Action Campaign, or PAC, posted the following statement on behalf of Donald Trump, or F. POTUS. The National Archives did not find anything. They were given, upon request, presidential records in an ordinary and routine process to ensure the preservation of my legacy in accordance with Presidential Records Act. An image of the statement below shows the image. And then this is where things get a little squirrely for me. This is where evidence would be. And this is where they would describe the actual probable cause used to secure this warrant. And it's redacted. And you go on, and it's redacted. And you go on, and it's redacted. All you get here is, according to a CBS Miami article titled "Moving Truck Spotted at Mar-a-Lago," published January 18th, at least 2 moving trucks were observed at the premises on January 18th, 2021, and then redacted, and then redacted, and then redacted, and then redacted. On or about May 6th, NARA made a request for the missing PRA records and continued to make requests until approximately late December 2021, when NARA was informed 12 boxes were found and ready for retrieval at the premises, or Mar-a-Lago. Then redacted and redacted and redacted and redacted. From May 16th to 18th, FBI agents conducted a preliminary review of the 15 boxes provided to NARA, and this is the original 15 boxes. Yeah. A preliminary triage of the documents with classification markings revealed the following approximate numbers: 148 unique documents bearing classification markings, 67 documents marked as confidential, 92 documents marked as secret, and 25 documents marked as top secret. Further, the FBI agents observed markups reflecting the following compartments of disseminations: HCS, FISA, ORCON, Norforn, and SI. Based on the training and experience, I know that documents classified at these levels typically contain NDI. Several of the documents contained what appears to be former POTUS's handwritten notes. So essentially, there were documents in there. These FISA documents and stuff like that. Okay. And then redacted and redacted and redacted. In the second such letter, which is attached, POTUS's counsel asked DOJ to consider a few principles which include FOTUS's counsel, first, claim that a president has absolute authority to declassify documents. In this letter, FOTUS counsel, I requested, among other things, that DOJ provide this letter to any judicial officer who is asked to rule on any motion pertaining to the investigation or in any application made in connection with the investigative request concerning this investigation. I am aware of an article published in Breitbart May 5th, available here, which states that Kasha Patel, who is described as a former administration official, characterized as misleading reports in other news organizations that NARA had found classified materials among records the former president. I mean, all it's doing is it's going on. It's all stuff that we already know. So essentially it's saying that their counsel requested that the DOJ provide a letter to any officer who's asking to rule on any motion pertaining to the investigation or any application, consider the principles that a president has the absolute authority to declassify documents, which is in the Constitution. And then redacted. On June 8th, DOJ counsel sent Trump's counsel a letter which reiterated that Mar-a-Lago is not authorized to store classified information and requested the preservation of the storage room and boxes that had been moved from the White House to Mar-a-Lago. Specifically in the letter, it says, as I previously indicated to you, Mar-a-Lago does not include a secure location authorized for the storage of classified information. As such, it appears that since time declassified documents were removed from the secure facilities of the White House and moved to Mar-a-Lago on or around January 20th, they have not been handled in an appropriate manner or stored in an appropriate location. Accordingly, we asked that the room at the Mar-a-Lago where the documents had been stored be secured and that all of the boxes that were moved from the White House to Mar-a-Lago, along with any of the other documents, be preserved in that room in their current condition until further notice, which they did. Now, this is the portion of the document right here that I'm interested in. And the reason being is because it says right here, as previously indicated, Mar-a-Lago does not include a secure location authorized for the storage of classified information. That is not entirely true. I have articles here from several news organizations, most of which, this one being NBC News, is not necessarily a conservative news outlet. The reason I'm pointing this out is, okay, so let's start with this. What is a SCIF? A SCIF is a sensitive compartmented information facility. If I'm getting dry here, wave your hand.
No, you're fine.
So essentially what happens is when a person becomes president, whether it be George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald J. Trump, any of the previous presidents, I don't know when this started, but a SCIF is set up, or a sensitive compartmented information facility. So when I say SCIF, you can think of a special room where secure documents are supposed to be held. A SCIF or secure facility is usually set up in the household of presidents. George W. Bush had one on his ranch in Texas. Obama had one at his home in Chicago, as well as his vacation home in Hawaii. And Donald Trump had one at Bedminster as well as Mar-a-Lago. So right here in this article from NBC News dated April 7th, 2017, it says the role of, I'm going to highlight this, the role of SCIFs in President Donald Trump's administration have made headlines as the president continues his frequent trips down to his resort in Mar-a-Lago, Florida. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer tweeted a photo Friday of Trump and his national security team monitoring the U.S. strike in Syria in what he described to be a SCIF from there. So this is a photo of the secured room inside of Mar-a-Lago from when Donald Trump was president. So essentially, there is a secure room at Mar-a-Lago. We now have an article here from the Palm Beach Post. I don't know what their political leanings are, but the headline is Trump in Palm Beach, Mar-a-Lago's skiff, JFK's bunker, and keeping national security secure. This titled November 5th, 2019. So again, this is before any of this stuff came out, and I've saved all of these websites just in case they mysteriously disappear. But right here in the article, mid-article, it states in one line, there is a skiff at Mar-a-Lago which is used when President Donald Trump is in town. So that proves that there is a skiff at Mar-a-Lago that was set up for, when he's visiting down there for secure documents, so on and so forth. That is top-level secure departmental facility. It is secure. It's the way it should be. Now, in full disclosure, there was an article in the Guardian, and this one though is titled where's the date on this one? I can't find the publishing date. It was recent though, because it's about the new developments, but I don't see a date stamp on it anywhere. Oh, there it is. Friday, August 12th, 2022. So this is recent. Now, this article states that a skiff was established at Mar-a-Lago, but you see highlighted, but it operated as a secure facility only during the Trump presidency. So my question is what happened that made this an insecure site? Did this, and this is an honest question because I don't know the answer to this. Is this something where it's no longer considered a secure facility simply because he's no longer president of the United States? Was there security in that room in place that is no longer in place? Why did this switch flip when he was president to when he's not president to where this room is no longer secure? Because that office and the storage room where the skiff was located at one point was considered secure. Yeah. So what happened that made it not secure?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is all news to me with regards to skiffs. I mean, I kind of figured, just generally speaking, that given the fact that most presidents will have a personal home that they're going to be traveling back and forth between at some point, during their presidency.
Even Camp David.
Yeah, Camp David. I mean, but you have to wonder, like, even in Camp David's setting, I would imagine that the entire facility isn't considered secure in the sense of being utilized for communication.
Just one room.
Yeah, Camp David would have to have, specifically.
And Obama, when Obama was president, and I'm sure it was the same for Donald Trump and for George W. Bush, but when he was president, he had a tent that he would take, and they would set it, like, let's say he was overseas for some reason. Yeah. They would set up a tent, and he would go in the tent, and that was a secure tent. Nobody outside or nobody inside the tent could have iPhones or cell phones or any of that stuff. So this is not a new concept.
No.
This is not something that Donald Trump invented just because he's Donald Trump. All presidents, as far as I know, since these safeguards were put in place, have utilized a skiff outside of the White House. So my question is, and the reason I bring that up is because if you look at this document and you look at the, essentially what they used to justify the raid, it says, as I previously indicated to you, Mar-a-Lago does not include a secure location authorized for the storage of classified information. That's not entirely true, because it did at one point. Why it's no longer considered, a secure facility, I'm not sure. Just for full disclosure, you go on with the document, still redacted, still redacted, still redacted. Still redacted, still redacted, still redacted, all the way down until we get to another point. Based upon this investigation, I believe that the storage room in Donald Trump's residential suite, Pine Hall, at the 45 office and other spaces within the premises are not currently authorized locations. So right there, the key word being currently, authorized locations for the storage of classified information, or NDI. Similarly, based upon this investigation, I do not believe that any spaces within the premises have been authorized for the storage of classified information.
So I was just looking up here. There's a company called SCIF Global that apparently builds these things. They have a definition. They said a SCIF is just a sensitive compartment information facility, a U.S. Department of Defense term for a secure room. It can be a secure room or data center that guards against electronic surveillance and suppresses data leakage of sensitive security and military information. SCIFs are used to deny unauthorized personnel such as foreign intelligence services or corporate spies the opportunity for undetected entry into facilities for exploitation of sensitive activities. So if you look at these things from the outside, they look basically like a trailer with like a super hardcore
you can
door.
Hold your phone up to the camera if you want.
So that's kind of a general idea as to what it would look like. But then if you look on the inside, it looks like just any old, room. Now, however, my understanding is that what they would do is they would take and designate a room within the said house or whatever their house looks like, and they would take that room and they would probably get a construction crew and start adding things to it, like sound dampening, and they would add surveillance, like scramblers and all other sorts of equipment that you would have to include to secure a facility like that. So the only thing I can think, and I'm just going at this from an honest perspective, is that I don't really understand what the criterion is on these things, that I would imagine that it's something that has to be checked constantly.
Yeah.
Something that has to be certified.
And then what I'm assuming is that when you're president, that room is considered to be secure. When you're not president, it's considered to be insecure.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of. Maybe it has to do with the guarding of that room. I'm sure that if the SCIF is in use and there's top secret information, that there's most likely some sort of guard on duty outside the door to make sure nobody's going in and out, things like that. So maybe those are the things that, but it seems to me like it's just the flip of a switch. So you're president and it's a SCIF, on switch. You're not president, off switch. Yeah. So it was a secure facility until he became not president anymore. And then the rest of the document is just the conclusion and the request to seal all the documents and so on and so forth and keep them secret. And then obviously the signatures. So that's the end of it. And then there's some evidence that goes with it. But that was the gist of the document.
So here's my take on all this. Based off of what we just looked at and based on the fact that the DOJ obviously doesn't want anybody to see anything. And one thing that you had mentioned earlier before we even started talking about this is that this is the actual document that's going to be provided to Congress.
Yes.
So absorb that for a moment. We have learned absolutely nothing from this document.
Yep.
We have learned nothing. There is no new information. There is nothing alarming outside of what we already knew from the get-go. This is what's being provided to Congress. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a worthless document.
It's absolutely a worthless document.
So unless that information that is redacted suddenly becomes unredacted and provided to said parties,
at least what do they call that? The Intelligence Committee.
Yeah. I mean,
at least to them.
Like you had said earlier, I get that they don't want to really. This is an ongoing investigation.
Yeah.
So I get the understanding that you don't want to release this information to the public. But if this is how it's going to look to the people, the parties that are that are overseeing this trial, that's some BS.
Yeah. That
the DOJ is either trying to hide something, is my thing, or they reviewed this and were like, well, this isn't. Yeah. Now that we looked at it,
that's the direction I'm going, because I'm just going to use one of Scott's old philosophies, and that's Occam's razor, or however you say it.
Yeah.
Usually the easiest explanation is the explanation, and it's most likely that they stepped in it, and they thought that they were going to get something major out of this, and then it turned out to be a nothing burger. So they're redacting all this stuff just because it's a nothing burger.
Yeah. So you can take this anyway. If you are like hell bent on seeing Donald Trump burn at the stake, then you're going to believe that, you know,
Absolutely.
everything in this document points to, you know, the G spot, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I get you.
But
little man in the boat.
But on the other side of the stick, I mean, we fall in the middle of this, and I'm just going to say that at the forefront. We fall in the middle of this, whether you believe that or not, it doesn't matter. But we fall in the middle of this. Is that if he is guilty of holding on to documentation that is considered a national security threat, that's an issue that he should be held accountable for. You know, there's no question about that, regardless. But if this is just a political stunt, if this is just a witch hunt, then there should be some punishment for those that push forward.
Head should roll. In all honesty, because this is not something. This puts a chill on every president from now on.
Yeah,
because every president is going to have in the back of his mind, are they going to send the FBI after me if I do this? You know,
exactly.
Or once I'm out of office, because obviously the president runs the FBI. But that's what's going to happen is from now on, when Democrats get in office, they're going to investigate the Republicans. And when Republicans get in office, they're going to investigate the Democrats.
Well, they're already threatening that. I mean, like McCarthy the other day said that as soon as we're back into power, we're going to make sure you all go to jail, is essentially what he said.
Yeah. And
I mean, I'm telling you, it's going to turn into a kindergarten.
I think that Mike Lee was right. Senator Mike Lee from Utah, he's a brilliant man when it comes to the Constitution and precedent. He should be someday he should be on the Supreme Court. That's my personal opinion. But the brilliant man, Senator Mike Lee from Utah, made the point that this is a door that's been opened, and he has no idea if it's going to be able to be closed again.
Yeah,
it's like trying to get the toothpaste back in the tube. Yeah. You really can't do it. So now what has happened is a weaponization of the DOJ for political reasons. And there's no reason to believe that when Republicans take power, that they're not going to do the same exact thing.
Yeah.
The problem is if it's warranted, and again, this is where I have trouble, because if corruption exists and people are doing things that they shouldn't do, then they should be held to account for that, you know? And the problem is no party is going to investigate themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
So it's always going to have to be, if the Republicans are doing something nefarious, I want them to be held accountable for that. Unfortunately, it's only going to be the Democrats that are going to search that out. There should be an independent party that could investigate this stuff that's neither a Republican or a Democrat that can say, hey, you guys aren't really playing by the rules one way or another.
That's where libertarians come into play.
Exactly. Or independents.
Or independents in general.
You know, somebody.
So just to take this from the media's perspective. So I would say that on a temperature grade, this story went from fajita sizzling, bringing it out on a plate, to now it's sitting under the lamp warmer. And it's been sitting there for 2 to 3 days, and it's getting old.
It's a dried up hot dog on a grocery store roller.
It's still warm.
It's at now.
It's still warm. It's still edible.
But it's nearing its expiration date.
So when they started out this whole expedition, so to speak, from the media's perspective, is that they started out that, you know, across every headline that I could recall, is that the word nuclear was in there. Nuclear secrets are being hoarded. Nuclear secrets are, you know, there's a probable enough reason to believe that there's state secrets that could be detrimental to the security of the U.S. and blah, 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 blah. Well, in none of the documentation, in none of the findings that have been released, in none of the press briefings, and nothing that has been brought up to this point has even closely even resembled the substantiation of any of those claims. No. So that's slowly fizzing out of, now it's, well, is he allowed to have the documents?
Yeah.
So, here's the thing is we already said, I mean, at least you said a couple of weeks ago, is that Barack Obama did secure 30 million documents for the use, I guess, at the library, his presidential library. But he went through the proper channels by which to do that, which means he went through NARA. NARA secured the documents, and I guess they
set up a SCIF.
They set up a SCIF, and that's where the stuff is maintained. So he went through the proper channels. The issue here is that they're trying to go after DOJ for having state security secrets, which we can take on that subject at a different time because that's a whole other ballgame. Is that the level of secrecy that surrounds anything that involves nuclear secrets is on a level far beyond what classified documents they're talking about. It's like Bill Maher said a couple weeks ago on his show, is that the one thing we forget to recognize is that classified has degrees and tiers.
Yeah.
And he's not Bill Maher is not a DOJ fan.
No, he's not a Trump supporter by any stretch.
He's just making the statement is that when you say classified, that could be classified, I sent a text to my wife, or classified, I have nuclear secrets.
Yeah.
There are two different ball games.
Yep.
So there's
same thing with top secret.
Exactly.
A conversation between the president and a foreign leader, like his conversation with the president of Ukraine that was so popular, that was top secret until they declassified
exactly.
it. And it was declassified by Donald Trump so that everybody could see what happened during the conversation.
And they're arguing that whether he has that ability.
He has that ability.
Even though he does.
The president does not need permission from anybody. He does not need to seek approval to declassify anything. The president of the United States, as what's the word, chief, the executive in chief, or the whatever it is, commander in chief. Yeah. Thank you. Such a brain fog today, Dave. I'm telling you. The commander in chief is the head of the military. He's the head of the intelligence community. The entire executive branch, he is in charge. So he has absolute authority on declassification, period.
Yeah.
So all the president has to do is say, no, that's not top secret anymore.
Well, it would have happened during the course of while he was still in office. It would have had to. He couldn't have done that while he was outside of office. It would have already happened by then.
And from what I understand, he declassified, and I'm just going off of, we'll call them anonymous sources, but I'm going off of anonymous sources right now. So take it with what you will. You know how I feel about anonymous sources. So take it as you will. But from what I understand of the situation, that these documents in question were declassified in the 11th hour of Donald Trump's presidency. So at 11 o'clock on January 19th, Joe Biden became president at midnight on January 20th.
Mm-hmm.
So at 11 o'clock on January 19th, 2022, or 2020, it would have been 2021, he declassified these documents.
Okay.
And took them to Mar-a-Lago with some of his other stuff. Now, some of these documents were just things that got shuffled in with other paperwork as they were leaving the office, which happens to every president, as they have so little time because they have to be there till the very end because he's president until midnight. So he has to make all the decisions by law until midnight, and then Joe Biden takes.
Yeah.
So they have very little time to pack up. So every time a president packs up and leaves, there's always some stuff that gets mixed in, and that's where this becomes not so strange and not so out of the ordinary because it happens, and it happens often. It's usually not to this level where they're accusing him of nuclear secrets. Another thing that comes from a somewhat anonymous source is that none of these documents were designated with a Q code. And what I've understood from intelligence officials, not only from listening to other podcasts and being online, but there was an intelligence gentleman that was on the Glenn Beck program, take it with what you will, but he said that nuclear secrets are usually designated with a Q code, and none of the documents in the affidavit were designated with a Q code, so they weren't nuclear secrets. Not only that, but think about it. Think about it logically. Nuclear secrets, how we design our nuclear bombs and stuff like that, one, what the hell does Donald Trump give a shit about how we make a nuclear bomb? And two, those kind of documents, the president has every right to see those things, but those kind of documents are taken from the Pentagon in a locked briefcase, handcuffed to somebody's wrist, taken to a skiff at the White House. The documents are presented in the skiff. The president is brought to the skiff, reviews the documents with somebody present. When the president's done, he leaves the office. The documents remain behind, and then they're secured again and taken back to the Pentagon. It's not like these documents are just FedExed to the White House or sent through U.S. mail to the White House. There's a process to which you get these documents. So I very much doubt, I'm not leaving it out of the realm of possibilities, but I very much doubt that there was any nuclear information in any of this stuff. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, so it comes to just a question of procedural issues more than anything.
It just seems like it's more of not necessarily what was done, but how it was done.
Yeah.
Because yes, Donald Trump did the same thing as Obama. He just went about it differently, which Donald Trump does everything differently.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what happened. That's the way it was.
Well, the thing of it is that, based off of what we're seeing right now, that's all we can conclude. And that's the thing I think people need to understand, is that we're looking at the same stuff that everybody else will have access to at this point. If just looking at it, I know based off of your feelings for him, is that's going to kind of sway how you feel, whether this is damning or not. But at the same time, the fact of the matter is what's out there is out there. It's not any different. So, at this point, unless the DOJ is willing to unclench their sphincter and release a little bit of light, shed a little bit of light of the bullshit that they're trying to pull over there, I don't know. That's all I can assume. If you're suddenly somebody that's progressive left or Democrat or Republican or conservative or whatever the case be, or in the middle somewhere, that suddenly trusts the intentions of the DOJ and the FBI, where have you been for the last 60 or 70 years?
It's funny too, because when I was growing up, those on the left were against the FBI and were against the DOJ and were against big pharma and we're against big business and corporations, and now all of a sudden they're like, yay, corporate America.
That's the thing. It's like, none of what's going on, whether you agree with this, the direct object of all of what's going on, which is Donald Trump, look at everything else that's going on. Look at all the secrecy. Look at all the vagueness. Look at all the half-truths that are going on. Christopher Wray and all this other, it's just Merrick Garland. Who the hell knows what that dude's up to? It's just,
he should honestly recuse himself from any of this.
Yeah, because it's gonna shed more.
Because he has a direct grudge against Donald Trump.
Yeah.
For stealing his
and
Supreme Court
the point
nomination.
is, if you want a court case, or if you want an actual hearing to go through to establish certain facts that are being alluded to, then you need to recuse yourself, because otherwise it's going to shed a light on those facts that make it doubt.
Put doubt into it.
Put a high level of doubt on whether or not any of these facts are even can be substantiated.
All I can say is, if you're a Joe Biden supporter or a Hillary Clinton supporter or an Obama supporter, think of it as from that point of view. What would you have thought if they were doing this to Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or Barack Obama, with the evidence that you're being presented? Don't think of it like, I'm trying to not think of it as a Donald Trump supporter. I'm trying to think of it as an American looking at what's going on, and it doesn't add up to me. Again, if it turns out that this is legitimate, and I can't say it enough. I quit. I'm sick and tired of having to qualify my opinions with, if he's guilty, then he should be prosecuted, because that's obvious. That should be obvious to everyone. Yeah. Anyone that breaks the law, whether you're a donkey or an elephant, then you should be held to account for that. It shouldn't matter.
Doesn't matter if you're a jackass or a fat ass.
Or a fat ass. Yeah. So I mean, I could go on forever, but that's where I'm trying to come at it is, if this were done to me, how would I feel about it? And it just doesn't add up to me. And I'm sorry, but that's just where I'm at.
Yeah. If anybody's in a court of law and they're throwing all these ambiguities out there and all this vagueness, I would be just like, well, no.
Given the information and the facts that I've been given so far, I'm absolutely shocked that the judge would actually sign off on this at all. And I feel like, and I'll have to do some research on this, but I feel like the judge actually has some bias in this situation as well. I believe he participated in some anti-Trump stuff.
Well, I mean, to think that judges are above
bias,
or above any kind of
they're
doubt.
not Christ-like figures, you know what I mean?
They're supposed to be letter of the law, and that's it.
Yeah,
that's all they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
But there was an article recently about 2 or 3 judges that got indicted for, I can't even think of what it was. I had to look it up again, but that was a pretty big story.
Yeah.
But anyways,
yeah, no, I
neither
get you.
here nor there.
But that's where I lay, is just try to look at this from an objective standpoint. If it turns out that this is all true and he had stuff that he shouldn't have had, then I'm all for him being punished for it. But calling for his death when you don't even know, like, there was people out there that were calling for his execution already just because. Yeah.
You're always going to have those. I mean, the thing of it is that. Yeah, it's with every the political spectrum anymore is that people have no control.
Yeah,
at least on the fringes. I mean, the problem is that we've discussed this before, is that people in the middle that have any sense of, right and wrong are going to try to hold, I guess, to some degree, what their judgments are on things until they have all the facts in front of them.
Yeah.
So the problem is that anymore we're basing what we're thriving off of, what's fueling the political spectrum right now is just the fringe, seething, waiting and.
I think what you should take from this is, do we want a justice system where you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent, or do you want a justice system where you're considered to be innocent until you're proven guilty?
Yeah.
Because the way that things are going in this country is we are developing ourselves to have a justice system where you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent.
Yeah, and that's a principal difference between the United States, or it always has been a principal difference between the United States and, like, say, the People's Republic of China.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it's like in China when they raid your home, there's a good chance you're never going to see the light of day. It doesn't matter if they raided it for wrong reasons.
Yeah.
They're going to find a reason to keep you there.
Yep.
The principal difference in the U.S. is that it's always been that if you raid a person's home, there's a good chance that the raiding party is more in the wrong than the person being raided.
Yep.
So if that balance tips in the wrong direction, then we're no different than anybody else in that regard. So
yeah, and there's a lot of people that are saying, oh, well, they wouldn't have signed off on a warrant if they didn't have probable cause. Well, that's not true at all.
That's not true.
That's not true at all. When did the left all of a sudden jump on the law enforcement bandwagon?
Yeah.
Like
it's all arbitrary.
Yeah. At any rate, so we're going to be in debt pretty badly. Inflation's going to go crazy. College tuition's going to go up. We're turning into a banana republic. Laws mean nothing anymore, and general warrants are okay. That's what we're getting from this from this episode.
Yep.
Isn't that such a bright and cheery episode?
Thanks,
Between
Mike.
the lines.
Thanks.
So
I'm gonna go jump off a bridge now.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to put links to all the articles in the description for the YouTube video below, so you can research these articles yourself. I'll put links to the PDF as well, so that you can get access to that. just read all these articles, read up on what's going on, because we're just showing you what we know. We're not showing you anything that's not readily available online. We're not contorting any facts. We're not editing anything. You can see it as we have it. We're just showing you where we're coming from.
Yeah.
So, take it with a giant pillar of salt, and do the research yourself. Pay attention to what's going on. If you like our content, hit the like and subscribe button down below. Hit the notification bell so that you can be notified when we get more content. If you're listening to our podcast on Spotify, you can follow us there. Hit the follow button, follow the podcast, like the podcast, give us some comments. If you're watching on YouTube, comment below and let us know what your favorite video is so far. And just kind of let us know how we're doing, what you'd like to see more of or less of, or anything along those lines.
Just want to end this out on a nice song.
That's awesome. For Dave. You can find us on Twitter at the BTL Podcast. You can find us on Facebook at the BTL Podcast, PA Between the Lines, and our website, thebtlpodcast.com. So until next time, check out our old videos, do some research, try to turn off the mainstream media because they're really not doing their jobs anymore. Find your news from other sources, like Between the Lines. Yeah. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.
See ya.
Bye.